Hey everyone, today I'm going to be covering Chainlink. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Okay, starting off on the high time frame. We are currently on the weekly right now, and it's very clear in the altcoin market that the bull run has started. And Chainlink is a really good example of that right now. If we just look at our accumulation phase that we had down in this region here, which lasted a period of about 518 days from our initial capitulation event over here and until our eventual breakout of that accumulation range. And I covered this in previous videos and on my Twitter over the course of that period, where I had said it was only a matter of time before we break out of that range. We had our green demand zone down here near the bottom of the range, which was your highest opportunity for ROI, and it gave you multiple opportunities to buy near that zone. We had our deviation below the range low. Yes, we had some deviations as well above the range high, but ultimately some might be taking the range high up to those wicks, but we had a very clear range low down to these dips, and then a very clear deviation, which took out all the lows, swept that liquidity, swiftly reclaimed the range low until we reclaimed the range equilibrium for an eventual breakout and takeoff out of that accumulation zone. I had marked out two targets above in these dotted horizontal lines. The first one being at about $12.50. I expected that target to be hit and said it was going to be an area that we needed to flip. And of course, right off the bat, we indeed flipped it with a really nice consolidation pattern thereafter. I took this ascending channel. I thought it was an interesting way of looking at this consolidation pattern. More often than not, I will take a horizontal range, but either way you look at it, we reclaimed that range EQ, which was a sign for continuation. We've now broken outside above that range high, and you'll notice we came right up to my second target here in the second dotted horizontal line at about $21, and we've just barely tapped it on the most recent candle's wick. So very healthy structure, very bullish structure. This is a good sign that the bull run has clearly began, and from the lows, Chainlink currently about 2 or 3x up. So if you missed out on the accumulation phase, and even if you missed out on this next consolidation pattern that we had most recently here between $12.50 and the range high at $17 or just over, if you missed out on both of those opportunities to accumulate, then basically the objective becomes to take advantage of the next dip before we ultimately go up to our next target, which I've marked out here at about $37, which from market price is a substantial move still, and that's from market price currently. Do I think there will be a better opportunity to get involved lower than current price? Yes, I do. Just at first glance, and again we're on the weekly, little bit of a spinning top candle forming right now, very thin candle body with a large wick up and a wick down. So ultimately my opinion is that dips are for buying, and given this is very bullish price action, I'm not certain we're going to get a classic retest of the range high for a better entry or an optimum entry, but obviously that setup is on the table, so being patient is going to be your friend. But this has confirmed a lot of things for me. So on account that we reclaimed the range EQ and broke out with decisiveness and came up to my $21 target here, it confirmed that the macro trend is definitely up. So over the coming weeks, I expect to see elevated prices, and I do expect that it will hit my $37 target. Thereafter, there's pretty much nothing until we enter price discovery, which would be a break of the all-time high here at about $52 or just over $52. So I talked about this in my previous videos. I talked about it on Twitter that this was an obvious accumulation phase. It was one of the more obvious altcoins that had this pattern. So those that were patient enough are now getting paid, but it doesn't mean it's too late to take advantage of the run. Typically bull markets last about 2 years. So I expect a bit more of a slow grind up to our targets, potentially a slower grind, but slowly, surely reaching these targets until the expansion really takes off and we get our blow off the top. But let's drill into the daily time frame. Okay, so looking at this, as I said, we've got our really nice consolidative pattern right here within our range high and range low that we've recently now broken out of. And it's going to be typical, I think, that we're going to see these consolidation patterns on the way up, whether if they're really short with kind of shallow retracements and then just ultimately slowly grinding up with these short-term consolidations, lower time frame ranges until we ultimately start to really put in that momentum to really take us up. So getting involved on these shorter term consolidation patterns is not a bad strategy, but personally, I'm going to be waiting for that larger high time frame correction. It's impossible to know at which point it will come, but it should be relatively obvious. We'll get kind of a mini blow off the top, and then we'll get some kind of macro consolidation pattern that will form a new range high and range low. And ultimately, that's going to be your next best opportunity opportunity to get in for the long term. You know, something like we've seen just down here after we got our breakout out of the accumulation range. We had a mini blow off the top here, and then we put in that consolidating pattern where it held the range low and ultimately reclaimed the EQ and broke out. So the next phase that we're in up here now outside of this range. So essentially this phase up here, I see it being much like this phase here, right? We came out of our accumulation range where we're ping-ponging around. We had our breakout, expansive move to the upside, mini blow off the top, and then consolidating pattern. So for me, I'm looking for that next consolidation pattern on a macro scale. Whereas in here, there's going to be mini consolidation ranges, many areas of temporary short-term corrections, but I think definitely putting in that slow grind up, as I said, just a steady escalation in price, but ultimately not a lot of opportunity to confidently get in with any serious size of capital until we get that real clear correction. As I said, next kind of mini blow off the top. And you know, it's possible that it happens well before our $37 target. So maybe that mini blow off the top happens actually sooner, around $26, for example, and then we come back down and chop around this target that I had down here at $21 for more of a macro SR flip of that level. You know, just as we had down here, okay, at this first target at 12.5, yes, we did smash right through it at that time, okay, but then we had our blow off the top and our correction, which came back down and retested that target over the course of, you know, a few weeks. So perhaps that's something we get right now, you know, kind of smash right through the target, which in my opinion, we've already met it at this point, but perhaps it slices right through it. You know, we come up to a high up here somewhere and then put in that larger correction, as I said, to really flip and accept that level now as support, but ultimately putting in that next macro accumulation range before ultimately essentially doing the same thing again, where we have our breakout phase, okay, after accumulation and reclaim of the range EQ, break out of the range high, and then steady grind up with mini consolidation patterns until ultimately putting in that next macro correction at our next target here. Okay, so something like that's the way I see it playing out. And I don't know at which point these corrections are going to come, but it's very clear once you do see them happen, right? You know, keep it simple. Green candles start turning into red candles. You start putting in swing fail patterns where it's not able to continue that trend. You start to establish a range high and you establish a range low. And it's very clear that we're in a consolidation pattern. And then you're waiting and watching for those dips down near the range low, but ultimately for that confirmation of the range equilibrium until the next lead up to our next high. So ultimately that's kind of the way I see this playing out. The macro trend is definitely to the upside, and it's going to be consistent with macro consolidation periods. And then, as I said, those lead ups with mini blow off the tops. But in the grand scheme of things, this is really, in my opinion, just getting started. You know, I think if we've got a year or two ahead of us of a bull market, this will be basically our part one impulsive macro wave out of the bear market, leading up to a 5-wave structure for this bull cycle. So in my opinion, it's not necessarily early, but it's definitely not too late. The time is now to be paying attention and to take advantage of the next 12 to 18 months, because in my opinion, it's only a matter of time before we break these targets. It's just about how you can get involved safely and at the best opportunities. Anyways, guys, that's just my thoughts for now. Just a really quick video on Chainlink today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you took something away from it, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch y'all next time. Peace.